Welcome to Young Asia Television.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm speaking today with a guest in our country. I mean, recently landed, very tired after going to many countries and cities in the region. Ibrahim Hussein Mohammed, and you are the Senior Portfolio Manager of the United Nations Volunteers in South Asia. It's not the kind of guest that we get on the program all the time, but I would imagine that many people are familiar with UNVs. Maybe you could just give a history, because you might know that Sri Lanka, through Shramadana, which is volunteer work, we have a rich cultural, historical tradition of volunteering for social good, both at the village level but also at the national level as well. I mean, perhaps in your work you have encountered this, that the UNVs actually resonate with the cultures of many countries in celebrating the spirit of volunteerism.
Absolutely, and I'm very glad to be here. Actually, this is my second time to be in Sri Lanka. I was here in last June, but for a short introductory mission, and I was very glad to have been in Colombo as well as in Vavonia. So it was short, but I managed to also see the other side of the capital. You know. The UNV program is the United Nations program that is entrusted with promoting volunteerism as well as using volunteering as the means to help in realizing peace and development. And as an UN organization, we are entrusted with that. So we are supposed to help the UN agencies to realize their programs for development and peace. And in general, we are also entrusted with the promotion of volunteering globally by establishing national volunteer structures. Basically, volunteering is an ethos that existed and exists throughout the globe. I mean, so through many centuries already. And in Sri Lanka, it was profoundly felt that it contributes to the well-being of the people through different societies. And from that viewpoint, we aim to help in structuring the approach to volunteering, and then also look at it as a means to further support the development efforts by the government and by the national entities, including NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and volunteer-involving organizations. In Sri Lanka, the volunteering existed actually, and we have seen that at different times during the tsunami. We've seen it, and the role of the UN in this case is to help in structuring that approach, basically, and ensuring that there is national capacity to carry on without necessarily the support from outside. So since it has existed, we need just to structure it.
I mean, I'm looking at the list, I think, that you had provided to the production house, and there are 26 volunteers as of today, and many of them are Sri Lankan, actually. I mean, I guess the popular perception of it is that the volunteers are actually foreign people who are brought in with particular technical expertise or skill sets that they then transfer on. But it's interesting that there seem to be many nationals, in-country people.
Actually, you're right. We have a number of national and international UNV volunteers. Even like at the time of the tsunami, we had many more of those. But the national UNVs is one of the schemes that UNV promotes. I mean, we have international UNV volunteers, and those are the ones that we send from north to south, or even from south to south. So we have volunteers from within the region. They come to serve in Sri Lanka. Those are international UNV volunteers. With the national UNV volunteers, we are very happy to see like so many of them, but those are attached to the UNV program, so we call them national UNV volunteers. There are many thousands or maybe millions of volunteers who are Sri Lankans that do not account for the numbers that we're talking about here. So, and in fact, UNV has many other modalities. In addition to the national and international UNV volunteers, UNV today manages a program which is called Online Volunteers, which is a very fascinating program because it helps anyone to contribute, including people who are living with disabilities, for instance. They can contribute behind their computers to development efforts by contributing. Even a bit of it could be like establishing a website, could be like translating a document
Or
for
even senior
a
citizens, I would
non-profit
imagine.
organization.
Yeah, or even senior citizens, I mean.
Or even senior citizens,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
You yourself, you can be,
Yeah.
if you'd like, I mean, you can really join the online volunteer program and you can apply for it. Any one of us can join today with the advancement of technologies, can join the online volunteer scheme. So this is a new scheme that is really adhering to the new technologies.
What's the average age in your experience of volunteers, or is it huge?
Yeah, the UNV volunteers are specialists. They are experts, professionals in their fields. We have maybe about 94 different specializations globally.
Globally, yeah.
And the average age for the global international UNV volunteers is 37 years old. They come with 5 to 10 years of experience. They are master holders, so they are really experts in their fields. For the national UNV volunteers, they are a little bit younger.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 25 to 30, 35 years old. That doesn't mean we do not take as well national volunteers who are older than that, maybe like up to 40 we can still take. But it has to be a minimum of 25 years old with a minimum of 3 to 5 years of experience, I would say.
I have a couple of interesting questions that I want to ask. One of the things is that how do you, this is in the larger sense, deal with the issue of sustainability? For example, hypothetically, there might be this wonderful volunteer who comes in with a skill set that the placement organization is then becomes over time dependent upon. And there might be the inability to transfer that knowledge because of local capacity constraints and the ability, or rather the inability to absorb that knowledge, which means that you become dependent on what is a temporary construct. And when that person leaves, then you might actually be in a worse off position for the help that you got, ironically. Do you deal with that kind of?
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you asked this question, because this is, I think UNV as a program within the UN is very well situated to show how sustainability is critical. I mean, and the exit approach of the different UN programs is very important to address through volunteering. And I think the exit approach should be planted in all the UN programs from the onset. As the programs start taking off, we should really start thinking of the exit approach, because people should not be dependent on the UN programs. I mean, this is in the large philosophy of the UN. For UNV, how we deal with it, we aim to establish always national NGOs, national civil society setups that will help to carry on after the end of the programs. And that happens definitely through volunteering in much profound way, because the volunteers are the outreach. They are the arm for the UN. I mean, whenever the UN organization focuses on the upstream, UNVs work at the downstream level by connecting to people, connecting to communities, and actually work directly with the communities to help them establish. The development should not be seen as a top-down. In fact, it has to be bottom-up, actually, because it shows how the people should be organized to carry on their own later on. And I think through volunteering, we're showing that. In fact, UNV volunteers, they work in complementing the cycle of development by the maybe 10%, 5% focused approach to involving the communities and ensuring community participation. I think that's where we have to focus, and that's where we have added value to the UN programs and the national as well.
And linked to that, I mean, we were talking off camera before we began recording about not just countries like Sri Lanka, but in your experience, other countries, like you said, Pakistan, for example, where there is this large reverse migration anyway of people in the diaspora going back to the countries either of their origin or of their parents' origin to help out on the ground. And has that contributed to more volunteerism within the programs that you administer? In a sense, post-war countries, you might say.
Yes, yes. It has contributed, and it continues, and we aim to build more on this. UNV runs a program. In fact, it was started by UNDP, and now it's entrusted to UNV, which is managed and administered by, let me say, more than managed, administered by UNDP as a program within the United Nations. UNV is entrusted today with managing a program which is called Talk 10, Talk 10, that is transfer of knowledge through expatriate nationals. This program works in stimulating nationals who are living in diaspora and they are experts in their fields, could be in the West or elsewhere. To give them a window of opportunity so that they come back to their countries and help in the development and realizing peace. Peace building is an important area, but also development is very important for countries who have undercome or bridged actually to the development from conflicts. I think in that capacity, especially we're focusing in Sri Lanka within our program for South Asia to help in bringing the Talk 10 as one of the sound programs that can help and contributing to the following stages.
Is there a kind of, I mean, what, now you spent 30 years in the United Nations?
20.
20. And within the volunteers, it's
about 10.
It's about 10. But, that 10 years would have seen 9/11, I would imagine. It would have covered, I mean, your period in the United Nations would have covered tumultuous events in world history. And the question I wanted to ask is, have you seen kind of like an ebb and flow of volunteerism? Are there points of time when there's greater spirit towards volunteerism? And are there points of time, perhaps with the decline in global travel, with the fear of terrorism, with the fear of engaging other cultures, that there is a reciprocal decline in volunteerism? Have you seen that?
I wouldn't say that. Actually, in fact, what we have been seeing in our records and statistics, volunteering within the UN has been steadily increasing.
Yeah, increasing, right.
So if you mentioned the 2011, I mean, at that time we had less than 4,000 volunteers. Today UNV manages almost 8,000 volunteers. So it's like doubled since that time. The interest in volunteering may have benefited as well, to some extent, from the financial crisis.
Right, okay, that's interesting.
Absolutely, because volunteering, as I mentioned before, we do not pay the volunteers for the efforts that they make. I mean, their contribution comes natural. It depends on the
spirit of volunteerism.
Exactly. I mean, we count on their willingness to contribute without expecting return. But we pay them an allowance that will help the volunteers to live decently, accommodated decently, and all that. So that allowance is mainly targeting this area. But their contribution is highly appreciated in the sense that it's their willingness to contribute to the development and peace. Now, having that said, we do not want this to be seen as like gap filling, for instance, I mean, for governments, because what our intention is to help in the capacity building of the national institutions. So we don't want to siphon the expertise from the governments and national entities into the UNV program and to the UN program, but rather help them to develop from within. And I think that is the beauty of the program, because it helps in establishing national volunteer systems and national volunteer infrastructures to the extent that they will develop within, tapping on the culture of the people and knowledge exists within the people instead of bringing from outside. What we bring from outside is mainly what the people don't have, but what the people have, we try to help them to develop from within. And there are different types of volunteering. As I mentioned, like we're entering now into a new era with advancement on technology, with online volunteers. And I would like to take this opportunity to invite everybody to look at that website of the UNV.
How do you ascertain who is worth or valuable? How is there a kind of like a process of that you select these applicants or vet them, or in some way say that you are of some value to us, and come on in, and then say to another person that yes, we value your work, but maybe not suited? I mean, is that a process?
It is. I mean, we have very meticulous process of screening the applicants.
That's across the board, online
across
as well.
the board, including the online volunteering. So we look at who are they. In fact, we have so far 200,000 assignments carried out through online volunteers globally. So the nice thing, I mean, about it, you could have like an online volunteer. If you have a job or an assignment to deliver within your institutions, it has to be a non-profit, though. And within your institution, if you need any support, online, virtual support, then we provide you with 3, 4, maybe 5 candidates from our roster, which is, we have above 90,000 now. You look at them and then you say, I want that person. That person could be in Brazil, Canada, South Africa, or Japan, because actually we're bridging. I mean, it doesn't matter. Or could be in Sri Lanka, by the way. So that is the nice thing about it. And we have a unit at UNV headquarters in Bonn which manages the matching between the requests and provision of the candidates. So that's for the online volunteers. For the national volunteers, and in fact the program helps in sending Sri Lankans to work abroad as international volunteers elsewhere with the UN program. So we have many Sri Lankans who are helping today in peace and development efforts outside Sri Lanka, I mean, including in Africa, in West, in the West, in some CIS countries with Europe, in Asia, as well as in Latin America and the Caribbean. So that's another side of it. I mean, promoting Sri Lankans as experts as well. So when they come back, they come with international expertise that can help in further developing in the country as well.
I mean, you've just come from India, right? I mean,
I'm coming from India
and
now.
this has been, I mean, in the sense, I began the program by saying that there is Shramadana, the movement, and the ethos, more importantly, in Sri Lanka. But you also have a wonderful spirit of social entrepreneurship in this region, of innovation. Not from the national, not from the elite, but also at the grassroots, at the village, non-traditional ways of doing things and thinking. Is that something that you also interface with because sometimes, I mean, it also could be the clash of cultures. You know, the UNV might have a different idea as opposed to perhaps the locale that he or she is placed in. Is that a clash? Or you frown? That's not a clash that you often encounter?
No, to the contrary. I feel like UNV has a unique situation within the UN, although the UN is a neutral organization in general, but the UN within the UN is like very rightly positioned, I mean, among the communities, because the community understand volunteering. They depend on volunteering for lots of activities they carry out, and they use volunteering in the right way. So whenever you present yourself as someone who is attached to volunteering, manages volunteering, or represent volunteerism, I always found acceptance by the communities. In fact, in India I visited a small village, and it's indigenous actually, and tribal areas they call it there. I mean, in the area of Ranchi and Jogahar region within in India. And I was fascinated with the way that they received us, they received the mission, the way they attached to UNV as representing the organization in general. And they called for more support, but the fascination is coming from the fact that, I mean, without any previous knowledge of India, I felt like I'm at home. And when I was addressing the communities, I told them, well, I felt like I really gained a new family. So, and they were very, very happy. I'm very proud of that. I was very proud too. But the support that we received from the region, from the government of the district actually, was also, I mean, it shows the appreciation of the role of the UNV volunteers as an organization for the UN in general. Let me just add one thing here, how UNV is seen within the UN organization. And I may quote Kofi Annan, the ex-Secretary General, when he visited Bonn in his tenure. And he mentioned that UNV volunteers for him is the face of the human face of the organization. And that he believed that UNV expresses the ultimate goal of the United Nations. So he said, this is what the United Nations is all about. Being there to help the communities without expecting return. This is the UN. And the UNV focuses at the grassroots level and the communities and society level. I mean, that's where we make a difference.
You know, I'm going to ask an impertinent question. I mean, UN officials such as yourself, you are used to programs such as this, so you have what you have to say and you say it well. Looking back at your 30, 20 years in the UN, it's obvious you mentioned pride. You are quite clearly proud of what you do. Are there things that you could have done better? I mean, the UNV, when you talk about the UN system writ large, very rarely comes up on the radar. You know this. There is that hidden, perhaps, I mean, they kind of acknowledge, I have many people in the UN system, but UNVs are always treated as kind of being somewhat separate, So the work that they do is not reflected in the understanding of the UN system that many have. When you look back, has that changed? You feel that there is a great acceptance? You said you were proud of your work, obviously. Things that could have been done better, you think?
Yes, I think there is progress towards recognition of...
Genuinely, honestly, you do believe.
honestly,
Yeah.
I really believe there is more efforts need to be done, no doubt. But I think we have made a big progress. I mean, let me look at the 2011 now, which is the year to mark the 10th anniversary of the International Year of Volunteers.
This was the resolution, right?
The resolution,
that's
exactly.
Right,
And in fact, we are expected to deliver a report to the General Assembly on 5th of December 2011. So let me look back 10 years where I was also still with UNV, which shows you how much I'm committed to the UNV cause and mandate. Before that, UNV was established in 1970, started working in 1971. And in 2011, and in 2001 was almost or exactly actually, it was the third years since the program started working. During the 2001, UNV realized, I mean, through 1 year of International Year of Volunteers, we realized that, as feedback that was coming to us, we realized that UNV was focusing more within its mandate on sending volunteers, mainly from north to south and a little bit south to south.
Right, yeah.
At that time, we realized, and that came as part of the feedback we received, we realized that we need to do more on establishing more national volunteer infrastructures and systems I talked about before. That year was focused on four pillars, which is promotion of volunteering, recognition of the role of UNV volunteers and volunteers elsewhere, facilitation for the volunteering, and networking among the volunteer organizations, UN and national entities. So these four pillars were very important to draw more attention to the UNV program as a lead organization within the United Nations to help in promoting further volunteering. We don't claim to be the only owners, but within the UN, definitely we are entrusted with this mandate, but we do even more by coordinating the role of volunteering, especially in the International Year of Volunteers 2011. We are playing role with other global organizations, you know, I mean, you can mention in the Association of Volunteer Efforts, IFRC, the Red Crescent, and Red Cross. So other international organizations work also on promoting volunteering, but we are entrusted with the coordination role. So I think that part is recognition for what UNV is doing.
Absolutely. I mean, final question. This year with Haiti, with Pakistan, many other disasters, what you've seen is quite an interesting phenomenon. It's called crowdsourcing or crisis mapping, where a global set of volunteers, Haitian diaspora after the earthquake, but also many others, are now collaborating virtually online to respond to the needs of the disaster-affected communities, and with the coordination and collaboration with regards to aid delivery and needs assessment on the ground. Now, obviously, that is also a strand of volunteering. That also in mind, maybe briefly, what would you like to see 10 years hence? So much as you said, been achieved. What are the goals for you?
We believe that, in the best situation, the UNV and the UN at large should vanish. I mean, if development has been really realized fully and peace as well, I mean, that's our role. I mean, if we are really performing the best, exactly. Because our goal is to help and facilitate, development and peace and contribute to peace and development. If we realize peace and development globally, then that would be, no need for the UN, to exist, basically. But yes, being like a neutral body, UNV is highly accepted in these situations you just mentioned. In fact, more than 50%, more than half of the UNV volunteers today serve with peace keeping and peace building missions, which is a big part of our program, actually. The other 50% works for development. And I think our role there has been highly recognized, and the work that UNV did in East Timor before, what we supported the tsunami in all the countries that hit by the tsunami, including Sri Lanka, in Pakistan, in Haiti, the last earthquake we had, in Sudan today.
But clearly you would like to see both the role and perhaps the volume of volunteers grow.
Absolutely. It's difficult to say what is the best number. Today I told you we have about 8,000 volunteers. So the question is 50,000 volunteers good? What we aim at and what we hope that the 6.5 billion people of the world today, they all volunteer their efforts. I mean, they do,
Yeah.
but we want to recognize them as volunteers. In fact, many times I see volunteers and I ask them, do you consider yourself as a volunteer? They don't recognize all the efforts they do as voluntary efforts,
Yeah.
but they do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure yourself, if I ask you today, you will remember a number of occasions in which you have volunteer services.
Perhaps it's that
so you
spirit.
are a volunteer.
So I suppose we all are, and perhaps that's a good note to end our program. Thanks very much
I appreciate
for
that.
joining us, and the best with the work that you do as well.
Thank you very much, and I'm very glad to be here, and thanks for receiving me again. I mean, Sri Lanka, it's just fascinating country, and I hope to come again, and maybe you have more opportunities to interact. Thank you so much.